everybody, welcome to lesson 10 of the B2 Upper Intermediate course. This is a review lesson. I've called it review 2 because if you remember lesson 5 we also had a review. So this lesson will look back at the things that we've covered in lessons 6, 7, 8 and 9. Review is really important because in each lesson we cover a lot of new vocabulary or structures, grammatical structures, and you need to have the opportunity to practice so that you can start to put some of these into your own English. So you could either do lessons 6, 7, 8, 9 and then try the review, or try the review and then go back and see which lessons you need to focus in on. Okay, so in lesson 10, you will review the present perfect simple, review the present perfect continuous, and we will practice describing personality and experiences. So lots to cover in this lesson. Okay, so in the advert for the lesson, I asked you if you could tell me the difference between these sentences. Letter A, I have worked in marketing since 2011, or B, I have worked in marketing since 6 years. A, I have had a headache all morning, or B, I have been having a headache all morning. What do you think? Which one is correct? And importantly, can you tell me why? So remember, when we're thinking about something's wrong, why is it wrong? Do you know the reason? Okay, well, in the first one, we're looking at using since. And if you remember, when we use since, we use a point in time. So the first one is correct. I have worked in marketing since 2011. If you want to say 6 years, you need to change it to 4. I have worked in marketing for 6 years. And the second group, the correct one is letter A. I have had a headache all morning. If you remember, there are some verbs that we have to be very careful when we're using in a continuous tense, and have is one of those verbs. But we will have a look at that in a bit more detail. Okay, let's start today with the present perfect simple. Okay, so this time I've given you 6 sentences and I have asked you which one is correct. So have a look at the 6 sentences. Is it correct, incorrect, and see if you can tell me why. So think about what we've just talked about. See if you can apply some of that logic to any of these sentences. Pause the screen and we will check together in a minute. Okay, how did you do? Let's have a look at the answers. So I have highlighted the answers in green. I have lived here since 1999. Not the past simple, I lived here. Because the living here started in the past and continues now, so you need a present perfect. Number 3 is correct. I have visited Milan many times, not I visited. Again, present perfect because you're talking about your experiences. If you remember, we talked about that's one of the big reasons that you need to use a present perfect tense, to talk about your life experiences. So well done if you got that one right. And 5 and 6. Number 5 is correct. I spoke to him yesterday. If you remember, we talked about signal words, words that when you see them, it tells you, it gives you a clue whether it's a past simple or a present perfect. And yesterday is one of those words. If you see yesterday, it's something finished in the past. If you're not sure, go back and have a look at lesson 6. Well done if you got those correct. Okay, also we have looked at just, already and yet. Have a look at the picture, have a look at the sentences and tell me, what word do we need to complete this? Just, already or yet? The train was due to leave at 2:30. Look at the clock. What time is it? So we can say the train has just left because it's just gone 2:30, so the train has just left. If it was much later, you could perhaps use already. The train has already left, but I think because the clock is showing just moved past 1/2 past, we'll use just in this situation. Okay, look at the date, look at the sentences and pick the word. Jack's birthday is on 23rd of June. The date today is June the 20th. Therefore, Jack hasn't had his birthday yet. So remember, we're using yet in negative questions, negative statements or in questions, so not in a positive statement. And here we had a negative statement. Jack hasn't had his birthday yet. Well done if you got that one right. Okay, look at the picture, look at the sentences. What's the missing word? The alarm rings at 9:30. Look at the time, it's now 10:10, so the alarm has already rung. So well done if you got those correct. Okay, we've also looked at the present perfect continuous. If you remember the form, how we form this, we looked at forming it in a positive sentence, a negative sentence, and in a question. So here I have given you 8 sentences and I want you to change the verb into the present perfect tense. Be careful when you're using have, if it's the first person or the third person, but see if you can pause the video, write down 8 sentences using present perfect continuous. Okay, how did you do? Did you remember? Let's have a look together. Number 1. Where have you been? I have been waiting for ages. Number 2. My hands are dirty because I have been painting the wall. Number 3. Emma has been reading that book all morning. Number 4. How long has he been watching television? Number 5. The CEO has been thinking about retiring since the start of the year. Number 6. I have been trying to reach you since 9 a.m. Number 7. He hasn't been feeling very well recently. And number 8. The sales team have been working on their presentation for 2 days. So hopefully you remembered you needed to use have, been and the ing version of the verb. Really well done if you got those correct. If you didn't, go back and have a look at the lesson on present perfect continuous. Okay, let's move on to some vocabulary practice. So do you remember we looked at vocabulary to describe personality? We had a lot of new words. We talked about describing some famous people. We thought about what they seemed like, what they appeared to be like. Remember, we couldn't say they are because we haven't met them. If you know somebody, then you can say he is or she is, But if you don't know them, you have to say she seems or he appears. And that's what we practiced in that lesson. So let's have a look at the first slide. Okay, here we have two friends catching up. What do you think, looking at this picture? How would you describe these two people? Pause the video, make some notes. Okay, so there's lots of different options here. I've just given you some, but there's lots of different options that you could have chosen. Let's have a look at what I've put. So I've put relaxed, friendly, chatty, content, sociable, chilled. So just on the basis of this photograph, lots of positive adjectives there. And remember, we talked about being very careful when you use negative adjectives to describe somebody, because they can take that quite personally. So it's better to use something neutral or positive if you can. Okay, and speaking of positive or negative, here we have 10 of the adjectives we looked at. And I'd like you to tell me, are these positive or negative adjectives? Do you remember? Okay, I'm going to read them for you and make a note. Positive or negative? Grumpy, trustworthy, reliable, nosy, generous, down to earth, bossy, jealous, chatty, and pushy. Pause the video and make a note. Positive or negative? What do you think? Okay, let's check together. So I've highlighted the positive in green and the negative ones in red. So the positive ones, trustworthy, reliable, generous, down to earth and chatty. And the negative ones, grumpy, nosy, bossy, jealous and pushy. How did you do? Did you get those correct? Okay, so you've identified positive or negative. Let's see if you can remember what they mean. So I've given you 5 sentences and I want you to complete using one of the adjectives from the previous slide. I've given you the first letter as a hint. Number 1, I overslept and then got soaked on my way to work. When I arrived, I was really... Number 2, don't believe anything he tells you. He's not... Number 3, when my colleague got the promotion I wanted, I felt very... Number 4, don't worry, my brother is very... If he says he will arrive at 9, he will arrive at 9. And number 5, Erica is too... She's always interested in other people's business. So pause the video and see if you can complete the sentences without checking the previous slide. Okay, what do you think? Let's have a look together. So number 1, I overslept and then got soaked on my way to work. When I arrived, I was really grumpy. Remember, bad-tempered. Number 2, don't believe anything he tells you. He's not trustworthy. Number 3, when my colleague got the promotion I wanted, I felt very jealous. And number 4, don't worry, my brother is very reliable. If he says he will arrive at 9, he will arrive at 9. And number 5, Erica is too nosy. She's always interested in other people's business. Okay, so hopefully you got lots of those correct. There was a lot of vocabulary in that lesson on describing personality. If you can't remember or you're not sure, it's a good idea to go back and have a look. And remember, when we are meeting new words, try to keep a note of them so that you can refer back to it. Okay, the last part of this review is going to be on adjectives to describe experience. Okay, so our first exercise, what I've done is I've given you 4 anagrams. Now, an anagram is when I've taken the word and the letters are moved around so they are in different places. So what you need to do is to try to move the letters to make the adjective. So have a look for anagrams, and they were all from the lesson on describing experience. Pause the video and see if you can unscramble these words and make them into adjectives to describe experience. It's quite tricky, this one, and I haven't given you a clue as to what the first letter is, so it is quite challenging, and super well done if you get any of these correct. Let's have a look together. So the first word was amazing. Number 2, bizarre. Number 3, awful. And number 4, wonderful. So as I said, it's quite a challenging exercise, so really well done if you manage to unscramble and make any of those words. Okay, when we looked at adjectives to describe experience, we talked about if they were positive adjectives to describe something happy, something nice, or if they were negative adjectives. And what I've done on the next slide is I've given you 5 groups of adjectives, but in each group there is an odd one out. So there is one word that doesn't fit. So for example, there could be 3 positive adjectives and 1 negative, or 3 negative and 1 positive. But what I'm asking you to do is to tell me which one is the odd one out and why. Let's have a look. So number 1, amazing, great, terrible and marvellous. Number 2, horrendous, awful, dreadful and weird. Number 3, dire, rewarding, memorable and wonderful. Number 4, incredible, marvellous, horrible and great. And number 5, dreadful, unforgettable, worthwhile and memorable. Lots of words there. Pause the video. All I want you to do is to tell me which one is the odd one out in each line and why. Okay, how did you find that? Let's see, let's check our answers and see if you were right. Okay, so in line 1, the odd one out is terrible, because terrible is a negative adjective and the other 3 are all positive. In line 2, the odd one out is weird. The other 3 words describe something negative, but weird describes something odd, strange or bizarre. So it's not necessarily negative, it's something that is unusual. Line 3, dire is the odd word out. The other 3 are very positive words, and dire is a very strong negative adjective. Line 4, horrible is the odd one out. Again, the other 3 are very positive words. And in line 5, dreadful is the odd word out. The other 3 are all describing something memorable, something that you're happy about, something that stays in your mind. Well done if you got those correct. Okay, so to finish with, I'm going to ask you some questions using these adjectives that we've just looked at. And this type of exercise is really important, especially if you're studying for an exam. You need to have lots of answers ready, prepared, using as much vocabulary as you can. So it's a really good idea to look at the question and to try to make notes. How would you answer this? What words would you use? How could you use as many B2 level words as possible? So number 1, have you had an amazing experience? Number 2, what have you eaten that was bizarre? Number 3, what was the most awful journey you have been on? And number 4, what is the most wonderful sight you have ever seen? So what I suggest you do is pause the video and see if you can make some notes. How would you answer these questions? Also useful from a social English point of view. If you're chatting with someone, these kind of questions you might be interested to find out, or they might want to find out about you. So again, useful practice to think of some answers. Thank you very much for joining me for review lesson 2. Hopefully I will see you next time in lesson 11. Lesson 11 will be another grammar-based lesson, and we're going to be looking at expressions like during, as soon as, by the time. So we'll be looking at how we use these expressions. So again, a very useful lesson for you, and I really hope you will join me then. Thank you very much. Goodbye.